Hello, I'm Reverend Kate from the Center for Spiritual Living in Carlsbad, California, and today I'd like to talk to you about being calm by calming down your state of being. So first, let's make sure that we're talking about the same thing when we say the word calm. After all, words matter. So calm has two main meanings, according to the dictionary. The first is freedom from agitation, freedom from excitement or disturbance. It's similar to peacefulness or feeling soothed. And the second meaning is simply stillness itself, not active. And it has a special meaning of not windy. In fact, there's a word very similar to calm, becalmed, that means kept motionless, kind of like a sailing ship without any wind, stuck, helpless, and unable to move. So, why should you learn to calm down your being? And how can you do it without finding yourself becalmed or stranded in the stillness? It might sound like a silly thing, stranded in the stillness, but it's amazing how many people have actually told me either they can't meditate or they don't want to meditate. And often we feel stuck in whatever is going on right now. And change feels scary, even if it could be change for the better. It's kind of like the idea that people have an ancestral reflex when they are in danger to either fight or take flight, or maybe just to freeze like a possum and just hope it all goes away. You know, even when a person feels like they're just beside themselves with stress or anxiety, it can be hard to let go of certain emotions or situations. Beside themselves. That's an odd term to describe someone being under extreme emotional stress, similar to being out of their mind or so filled with an emotion that it feels like they're no longer in control of their own mind. You could say someone is beside themselves with fear, or you could even say they're out of their mind with happiness. We can be overwhelmed by feelings, whether they are positive or negative. So, have you ever thought of yourself as being beside yourself? I have. In fact, here's a good story. When my husband and I were waiting for adoption, and I got the phone call from the adoption agency that they had a son for us, I was beside myself with joy and excitement. It was fun. It was exciting. And gradually, I calmed down and got centered enough to call everyone I knew and to get ready. When you're beside yourself, you can find yourself unable to function well, even if you are beside yourself with happiness. But when you're centered, it's as if you have a good footing, a firm hold on life, and you feel strong. You know, just a few weeks ago, the gymnastics star, Simone Biles, had to withdraw from most of the Olympic competitions. And she told reporters, whenever you get in a high stress situation, you kind of freak out. And so she decided she needed to stop and focus on her mental health. She said she had the twisties, meaning she literally could not tell up from down, and described it as the craziest feeling ever. Oh, that's a pretty extreme and very public example of someone being besides themselves. And it's an example of the possible consequences of having what I would call an agitated mind. She wasn't centered in mind and body, and so she simply couldn't perform until she could compose herself again. She was beside herself with nervousness, but she had the good sense to take a break and pull herself back together. Notice how all these words paint a picture of falling apart, being beside oneself, out of your mind. It can happen to anyone, and it's probably happened to you, right? Stuff happens. And sometimes life knocks us for a loop. I could also give many negative examples, like when there is an accident or an emergency, but I think you can probably think of these types of examples already. All you have to do is turn on the TV or the radio, and you see people dealing with stress of all kinds. It's not my goal to add more pictures of sadness or strife into your life today. Just the opposite. We're here for just the opposite reason. I want to just share some ideas about coping with life, getting back on your feet or staying sure-footed, clear thinking, strong and centered in the face of whatever comes your way. And when stuff happens, we all want to be able to cope with it in a sensible, life-affirming way. Now, we really can learn how to calm ourselves. People have been figuring out how to calm themselves really since the beginning of time. Here's a picture from the Book of Kells of someone meditating, getting centered. There's a picture of a mandala below the person sitting there and looking at mandalas, drawing. There are all kinds of spiritual practices that we can use. At our Center for Spiritual Living, we teach that our words and our thoughts create the tendencies in our lives. And then these tendencies in our lives lead to the creation of our experiences and interactions. We know that behind everything we experience or even imagine, behind everything we can envision and more, there is an infinite creator. People call it God or spirit, or some people just call it life. In fact, this thing, whatever you call it, is a power for good. It's greater than you are, and you can use it. You can use it because you are made of it. You are one with it. Even though you are not all of it, it is infinite energy, infinite possibility, infinite good, infinite beauty, infinite intelligence, happiness. God is perfect always and in all ways. Ernest Holmes, who wrote our Science of Mind textbook, had a lot to say about this, and I thought I would share the definition of poise from the glossary of the textbook. It says, poise is mental balance. Poise is that perfect balance which maintains everything in its proper place without effort. It is the law of equilibrium, right? Without which nothing could be maintained. It is the law of balance that must exist in infinite mind, since there is nothing to disturb infinite mind. Poise, or balance, is the law back of what we term the law of compensation or cause and effect. It is life perfectly balancing itself. Self-existent life alone could produce complete poise. We cannot fathom or probe the full meaning of poise as it exists in spirit, but we can understand that it means an eternal power, unruffled by conflicting emotions, always sure of itself, unhurried and certain. The activity of the mind may be so perfectly adjusted, so perfectly poised, that it will give the impression of suspended motion, the impression of centeredness. That's what we're talking about. An experience of poise, an experience of mental balance, being calm, centered, not agitated, not in a crazy, wild, out of control or highly charged, even dangerous state of being, whether physical or emotional. No, in fact, right now, let's just stop and take a breath. And if you're sitting safely, close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself in a serene or pleasant, calm place. What does it look like? What does it sound like? Where are you? Okay, open your eyes. And what did you imagine? Probably something pleasant. I thought of sitting on the side of a quiet stream, just relaxing. And then I also thought about my cat, watching my cat lying down, watching him relaxing in a sunbeam. He's very calm. I'm sure you think of being calm as being in a good, sane, peaceful state of mind where you feel like everything seems okay, right? Now, earlier, I also mentioned the word becalmed. And if you have sailed boats or if you have read about old sailing ships, you have heard of people becoming becalmed. And it can be a dangerous experience when a sailing ship is unable to move. This picture is showing how when a ship is becalmed, they used to send out a boat with rowers and try to pull the big sailing ship along until the weather would actually shift and the wind would come up. Because a sailing ship is unable to move if there is no wind in its sails, if there is nothing to power it on its way, sort of like running out of gas 100 miles from anywhere on a deserted road. No power. The boat, the car, they're just stuck until something happens, something changes and turns the power back on. Now, we can create a becalmed state of mind by either being too tired, too scared, or even too prideful to admit that we are besides ourselves, but also by using perhaps some unhealthy coping mechanisms that are often referred to as addictions, but they can creep up gradually on us to begin with as merely habits. Now, I am a big fan of 12-step programs, and I believe all of us can benefit from some of their ideas at least, including their simple affirmative slogans like, keep coming back. It works if you work it, and one day at a time. If you are stuck in a mood, if you have an unwanted habit, why not cut yourself some slack and just tackle turning things around moment by moment, day by day, with patience and persistence. And really, one day at a time can be a pretty darn good mantra. Now, our new thought teaching goes even farther. It's about learning and using spiritual practices to improve our lives by also having the understanding that we are connected to each other in a deeply spiritual way, as well as in a day-to-day way, just as we are connected to spirit or life itself. And we're not alone in teaching spiritual practices by any means. These days, you hear so many people advising you to become calm or to practice mindfulness or meditation. In fact, meditation is no longer just considered a spiritual practice. It is becoming something people have found they can use as sort of a mental fitness exercise in the same way that they practice physical fitness exercises. And it's good. I'm all for mindfulness, whether it is promoted as a spiritual practice or not. Just like I'm all for people taking walks in nature, whether they just feel a need for physical exercise or whether they are actually looking to feel a deeper connection with nature. Both reasons are good reasons. Both reasons bring beneficial results. Still, I do want to let you know that there is a special type of calmness that you can seek and you can find. Think of it as the sweet spot of calm. It's just right. Usually, when we think of calm, we just think of not frantic, not distracted, not agitated. But this state of calm that I'm talking about is actually a place of power. I want to share some words about this peaceful, calm state that come from the Sioux healer, Black Elk. He said, the first peace, which is the most important, is that which comes within the souls of men when they realize their relationship, their oneness with the universe and all its powers. And when they realize that at the center of the universe dwells Wakantanka, the divine, and that this center is really everywhere. It is within each of us. This is the real peace, and the others are but reflections of this. And he goes on. The second peace is that which is made between two individuals, and the third is that which is made between two nations. But above all, you should understand that there can never be peace between nations until there is first known that true peace, which, as I have often said, is within the souls of men. Now, this calmness, this first peace that he describes so beautifully as coming within our own souls when we realize our relationship and our oneness with the universe and all its powers. And when we realize that the divine center is everywhere, this is the peace, the sense of calm that we seek. Recognizing this place of peace is actually recognizing the divine. Every week we offer guided meditations, and for the guided meditation I posted yesterday, or on August 21st, I used a quote from this thing called You by Ernest Holmes that began like this. Your faith can penetrate clouds of unbelief and reveal the truth, which is forever perfect. Your words do not create this truth. They merely reveal it. By way of illustration, imagine yourself looking at the picture of a beautiful landscape. In this picture, there are trees, a house, a stream of water, a beautiful meadow, and in the background, mountains, a blue sky dotted with clouds. You look at it long, contemplating its beauty. Now, suppose that a colored glass is placed between you and the picture, so that the picture appears blurred. Everything seems distorted. And yet, nothing has happened to the picture. Here I'm putting up a little picture, but all it's doing is blocking my head. But the point is, what he's saying is, the picture is still there on the wall. It may be seen. It's always there. And he goes on, mental statements are merely a method you use for the clearing up of mental images. Neither affirmations, denials, or statements create the pattern of perfection, nor can they change it. They merely rearrange your thinking. If you could rearrange your thinking instantly, you would have an instantaneous result. If it takes time, do not become discouraged, for you are working with a definite principle which cannot fail you. Your desire for self-expression is inherent in the divine pattern itself, and it is because you intuitively feel this pattern that you grope back toward it. Learn to trust the intuition which causes you to sense the pattern. What he said about recognizing a divine pattern is really similar to what Black Elk said about realizing a divine center. You see, it's already here. The place of peace, that center of calm, already exists. Some people experience it as a sense of grace, some as a feeling of bliss, some as an inner voice or intuition, some as a feeling of light or of joy. You might think of it as a stream of life flowing everywhere, or perhaps as sparkles of light shining everywhere, or maybe just think of it as loving kindness surrounding and supporting everyone and everything. This divine pattern, this good, is personal, and yet it's also at the very same time universal and impersonal. It doesn't play favorites. You can recognize and appreciate it as well and as easily as anyone else. The only obstacles to feeling this sense of peace and calm are within us. And yet, don't blame yourself. You're on a journey through life, and you have been shaped by your culture, your experiences, your family, your personal situation, but nonetheless, now you are free. You are now free to follow your own path from this moment on. You do this by thinking your own thoughts. Holmes said, since no two persons are alike, there must be a unique place for you in the scheme of things. The divine pattern would be imperfect without you. You matter. Dare to be yourself. Stand in wonder before the majesty and might, the beauty and power of that divine presence which seeks expression through your individual life. Accept all the good there is. Whatever things you desire, believe that you have them. Say to yourself, I surrender all fear, all doubt. I let go of all uncertainty. I know there is no confusion. There is justice, knowledge, right government, divine guidance without judgment. And he goes on. This does not mean that I accept lies or think that mistakes are as good as right action. It merely means that divine intelligence operates through me without confusion, calmly, forward-moving, progressive, upward spiraling, outward reaching. I am guided by infinite wisdom into that light which is eternal. My soul is jubilant, joyful. That's right. Say it and know it. My soul is jubilant. I am guided by infinite wisdom into the light. I am the beloved child of spirit. My peaceful mind brings more light into the world. Can you practice saying something like this? I am guided by infinite wisdom into the light. I am guided by infinite wisdom into the light. I am guided by infinite wisdom into the light. Everything is already perfect, and I clear my thinking. I allow myself to feel calm. I see clearly. I think clearly. I make wise decisions, and I take right action. This is how our peaceful and calm minds bring more light into the world and into our own lives. That's the truth. If you have more questions about the how-to, please feel free to visit our website, www.cslcarlsbad.org. And know that you are perfect, whole, and complete, deserving all good, surrounded and supported by the love of that creative intelligence, that light, that wonderful spirit itself. Have a wonderful week.